The man sitting against the brick wall of a Los Angeles convenience store has not slept in 4 days. He is wearing 3 coats in 80-degree heat. His name is Marcus. He is 47 years old, and he can tell you the exact day his life cracked open. November 9th, 2004, the day his mother died. Walk down San Pedro Street in downtown Los Angeles, the area people call Skid Row, and you will see thousands of stories like his. Tents line the sidewalk for 50 blocks, shopping carts stacked with everything someone owns, the smell of urine baked into concrete that has not been washed down in months, and a pattern that anyone with eyes can see. Black men in numbers that have nothing to do with how many black men actually live in this country. Black Americans make up about 13% of the population, but on the streets of Los Angeles, of New York, of Atlanta, of Seattle, they account for nearly 40% of the homeless population. In some cities, more than half. This is not a coincidence, and it is not laziness. No matter what the man in the suit walking past Marcus tells himself to feel better about not stopping. This is the psychology of what is actually happening inside the minds of black homeless men in America. And once you understand it, you cannot unsee it. To understand Marcus and the thousands like him, you have to start before he ever touched a sidewalk. You have to start in childhood. A staggering percentage of chronically homeless black men in America pass through the foster care system as children, roughly 1 in 3. The foster care system has a problem nobody likes to talk about. It does not prepare children for adulthood. It releases them. At 18 in most American states, a child in foster care is given a garbage bag with their belongings and told they are now an adult. There is no transition program in most cases, no family safety net, and no financial cushion. Studies that track foster youth in the years after they age out show that within 4 years, almost 1 in 4 will experience homelessness. Black foster youth face even higher rates because they are placed at older ages, moved more frequently between homes, and adopted at lower rates than their white peers. Marcus aged out of foster care in southern Mississippi in 1996. He spent the first night of his adult life in a Greyhound bus station in Jackson. He has, in some form or another, been working his way back from that bus station for almost 30 years. Now layer something else on top of that. Generational housing instability. The grandfather who could not get a mortgage in 1962 because of redlining maps drawn in federal offices in Washington. The mother who rented her whole life because her family never built equity. The cousin who got evicted 3 times before he turned 25. Housing in Black American families has been treated as something that can be taken away at any moment because for generations it could be. That is not paranoia. That is memory. And memory in the brain becomes architecture. Walk through a tent encampment in Oakland or in Atlanta and watch how the men move. You will notice something. They do not turn their backs to the street. They sit angled, always able to see who is approaching. They sleep in shifts when they can. They flinch at sounds you do not even hear. The diesel engine of a city sanitation truck, the clatter of a metal gate, a voice raised 3 blocks away. This is hypervigilance. It is one of the core symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, and it is everywhere on the streets. The brain, after enough threat exposure, rewires itself to scan constantly. Cortisol levels stay elevated. Sleep becomes shallow and fragmented. The body never fully stands down. It is exhausting. It is also, for a man living outside, completely rational. But here is where the cruelty gets layered. Hypervigilance does not look like fear when it lives in a black male body. It looks, to a passing stranger, to a police officer, to a shop owner, like aggression. The wide alert eyes, The defensive posture, the quick scan up and down when someone approaches. Marcus has been pepper sprayed by a security guard in Long Beach for asking what time it was. He had simply turned his head too quickly, so he learned not to look at people anymore, not to ask, not to engage. He drops his eyes to the sidewalk when anyone walks past, and the people walking past tell themselves the man on the sidewalk is unfriendly, dangerous, lost. They are seeing the survival adaptation, not the man. There is research on this. Social psychologists have found that pedestrians make threat assessments about Black men in roughly 200 milliseconds, faster than conscious thought. The amygdala fires before the rational brain catches up. By the time the person walking past has decided to cross the street, their body has already decided for them. Marcus knows this. He has felt it for 47 years. The street did not invent that gaze. The street just concentrated it. Now ask the obvious question. Why does Marcus not just go to a shelter? The shelter system in most American cities is built on a logic that does not match the psychology of the people it is meant to serve. It is run with rules that resemble a halfway house, curfews, mandatory programming, sobriety requirements, religious services in some cases. For a man whose nervous system is already wound to the breaking point, walking into a converted warehouse with 200 other men, many of them in their own crisis states, is not relief. It is amplification. Theft happens in shelters. Assault happens in shelters. A pair of shoes left at the foot of a cot will be gone by morning. The medication a man depends on, gone. The photograph of his daughter, gone. A man who has spent his whole life learning to read threat will read every face in that room and decide the sidewalk is safer. He is often correct. There is also the issue of dignity. A shelter strips you of autonomy in ways that are hard to articulate until you have lived it. When you eat is dictated. Where you sleep is dictated. What time you must leave in the morning is dictated. Whether you can come back in the evening is dictated by whether a bed is still open. For a Black man in America, who has often lived a life where institutions, schools, prisons, courts, child welfare offices have made every important decision for him, walking voluntarily into another institution is psychologically near impossible. The street, with all its dangers, is the first thing he has owned. This is not stubbornness. This is a logical response to a lifetime of institutional harm. Then there is the criminal record, and this is where the math of an exit gets nearly impossible. A Black man in America, statistically, is far more likely to be stopped by police, arrested, charged, and convicted of low-level offenses than a white man committing the same acts. The data on this is extensive and uncontested by serious researchers. By the time a Black man hits his 30s, even a single misdemeanor possession charge from a decade earlier can disqualify him from public housing. Most Section 8 programs run criminal background checks. Most private landlords run them. Most jobs that pay above minimum wage run them. So the man on the sidewalk is not just battling addiction or trauma or unemployment. He is battling a paper trail that follows him into every interview room and every leasing office in every city he tries to start over in. He fills out the application. He checks the box. He never hears back. He calls the leasing office a week later and is told the unit is no longer available. He walks past it the next day and sees the for rent sign still in the window. He understands what happened. He has understood it many times. After enough rejections, the brain stops trying. There is a psychological term for this: learned helplessness. It was first documented in lab experiments in the 1960s, where animals subjected to repeated inescapable shocks eventually stopped trying to escape, even when escape became possible. The cage door opened and they did not move. Their nervous system had already learned the lesson. A homeless man who has been rejected from 12 apartments and 42 jobs has learned the same lesson. The application is the cage door. He stops walking through it. From the outside, this looks like a man who is not trying. From the inside, it is a brain that has accepted reality and is conserving the energy required to survive another night outside. And then there is the substance use, which everyone wants to talk about and nobody wants to understand. The narrative that homeless men become homeless because they are addicts gets the timeline wrong. Most chronically homeless men were not heavy substance users before they hit the streets. Most became substance users on the streets because being awake and sober on a sidewalk in downtown Los Angeles in February is unbearable. The cold seeps into the bones in a way that mattresses and walls protect most people from feeling. The hypervigilance never stops. The grief, the rejection, the invisibility, all of it pulses through the body without relief. Alcohol numbs the cold. Crack cocaine in earlier decades produced wakefulness that let a person stay alert through the night. Methamphetamine serves the same purpose now in many West Coast encampments. Fentanyl, in the current era, provides oblivion. Cheap, fast oblivion. $15 buys a few hours of not being a homeless black man in America. The math from inside the experience is brutally rational. This is self-medication for untreated post-traumatic stress disorder. Most of these men have never been formally diagnosed. They have never sat in a therapist's office. The mental health system in America is bad in general, and significantly worse if you are black and uninsured. There is also a cultural layer. Black men of Marcus's generation grew up in households where therapy was for white people, where you handled your own business, where weakness was not a luxury you could afford. The medication then is whatever the corner sells, and the corner sells things that kill. Fentanyl overdose deaths among unhoused black men have climbed every year since 2015. In Los Angeles County alone, hundreds of homeless men die on the streets every year, and the largest racial group in those numbers is, every year, black men. They do not make the news. There is no obituary. The body is moved by the medical examiner. The tent is cleared by sanitation. The sidewalk is hosed off, and the city moves on by morning. Sometimes another man takes the spot by nightfall. He never knew the man who died there. He just knew the doorway was good for blocking wind. Which brings us to maybe the deepest psychological wound of all, the invisibility. Marcus has been sitting against that brick wall in Los Angeles for, depending on the season, somewhere between 2 and 7 years. In that time, an estimated tens of thousands of human beings have walked directly past him. They have made eye contact with him perhaps a dozen times. They have spoken to him perhaps 3 or 4 times. He has been, to much of the city, furniture. There is a concept in psychology called social death. It refers to the state in which a person is biologically alive, but socially treated as if they do not exist. It was originally studied in the context of slavery, in the context of prisoners in solitary confinement, in the context of the elderly in poorly run nursing homes. It applies fully to chronic street homelessness. When you are looked through for years, your sense of self begins to dissolve. Identity is something we build with other people. It is reflected back to us in their eyes. When the eyes stop reflecting, the self begins to thin out. Marcus has described this, when he talks at all, as a feeling of becoming smoke. He says that some mornings he is not sure whether he is really there. He has said that hearing his own name when an outreach worker uses it sometimes startles him because he had almost forgotten the sound of it spoken aloud. This is why outreach workers, the people who walk the encampments handing out water and socks and naloxone, will tell you that the most important thing they do is the smallest thing they do. They learn the man's name. They use it. They remember the name a week later when they come back. For a man who has been smoke for years, hearing his own name spoken with recognition is a small thread back to existing. But that thread is fragile. The system of getting a man like Marcus from the sidewalk into housing is one of the slowest, most relationship-dependent processes in social work. Housing First, the program model that has produced the strongest outcomes globally, operates on a simple premise: give the person a home with no preconditions, and then work on everything else. No requirement to be sober first, no requirement to be employed first, no requirement to do anything except accept the keys. It works. The data on it is strong. Cities that have implemented Housing First properly, like Helsinki in Finland, have reduced street homelessness by more than 70%. In American cities, the rollout has been spottier, more underfunded, more politically fought over. But where it has been tried with full resources, it has worked. The catch is the part nobody talks about. Getting Marcus to accept the keys takes on average 9 to 18 months of contact with the same outreach worker, 9 to 18 months of someone showing up every week, learning his name, learning his story, sitting with him on the sidewalk and doing nothing else. No pressure, no paperwork, just presence. Because the trust has to be built before the door can be walked through. The brain that has learned that institutions are predators does not simply unlearn that lesson because someone offers an apartment. It unlearns it slowly through repetition of safety, through one human being week after week demonstrating that they will keep coming back, through small consistencies, the same outreach worker, the same brand of granola bar, the same question about how the night was, repeated until the nervous system begins to register that this person is not, in fact, going to disappear. Most American cities do not fund this kind of work at the scale required. Outreach workers are stretched across hundreds of clients. Turnover among outreach workers themselves is high because the work is heavy, the pay is low, and the burnout is fast. The relationships break before they can build, and so the man on the sidewalk stays on the sidewalk, and the worker who knew his name moves to a different agency, and the next worker has to start over from zero. Now think about all of this together: the foster care exit, the generational housing trauma, the hypervigilance read as aggression, the shelter system that traumatizes more than it heals, the criminal record that locks every door, the learned helplessness, fentanyl as medicine, the invisibility wound, the slow, underfunded path back. This is not a man who chose the sidewalk. This is a man whose nervous system was shaped, decade by decade, by an environment that had very little use for him, and who has adapted to the only reality he was offered. The sidewalk is not his preference, it is his architecture. And here is the part that should sit with you for a while. Almost every chronically homeless black man you see in America was once a child. A specific child in a specific neighborhood with a specific name his mother used to call him at dinner time. He had a favorite breakfast cereal. He had a teacher in 3rd grade who told him he was smart. He had a hand he liked to hold when crossing the street. There is no separate species of person who ends up on a sidewalk. There is only a chain of failures, public and private, that landed him there. And the chain is mostly invisible to the people walking past. If you started watching this and you found yourself, at any point, thinking that the man on the corner just needs to try harder, ask yourself one question. Try harder at what? Try harder to walk into the shelter that gets him robbed. Try harder to apply for the apartment that rejects his record. Try harder to stay awake all night without something to numb the cold. Try harder to be visible to people who have, for years, refused to see him. The question is not why these men are still on the streets. The question is how anyone, given the same architecture, would end up anywhere else. Marcus is still on San Pedro Street. He still wears the 3 coats. The outreach worker who knows his name is named Denise. She has been visiting him for 16 months. She brings him the same brand of trail mix every Tuesday. She asks the same question about how he slept. Last week, for the first time, he asked her about a possible apartment. He has not said yes. He has not said no. He just asked. That, in this work, is everything.